Freedive Live, episode number 9 with Ted Hardy. My name is Ted Hardy, the founder of Immersion Freediving, as well as freedivingsafety.com. If you have not visited freedivingsafety.com, you should definitely check it out. It's an online resource that goes over the risks of the sport, talk about the fatality numbers in the sport, how to minimize your risk of having a hypoxic issue, loss of motor control, or blackout, how to tell if you're overweighted. They make sure you're not breathing in a way that's increasing your risk, and ultimately it teaches you what to do if your buddy has a loss of motor control or blackout. So if your buddy were to blackout, do you know what to do? If not, visit freedivingsafety.com. Right, and it's free, right? The other thing I'll do is if learning how to not kill yourself and save your buddy isn't enough interest to you to make you go check out the site, I will also try to bribe you. There's a quiz at the end, and if you pass the quiz, you're going to get email with discounts to 9 of the sponsors of freedivingsafety.com. So save some money, learn to save a life, and don't kill yourself, right? All can be had by going to freedivingsafety.com. And it goes along with my new goal and mission is I want to teach more people about safe freediving than anyone on the planet. I think freedivingsafety.com is doing a good job, going to get me along the way. So do me a favor, for those of you that are tuning in, this way I can always know that the stream is actually running. For those that are watching in the chat, let me know where you're from, and if you would classify yourself as more of a spear fisherman or a freediver. Right, when I say freediver, a recreational freediver, basically not a spear fisherman. That way I get an idea of what the audience is like. So for those of you that tuned in yesterday and saw episode number 8, I apologize. That was basically everything that could have gone wrong went wrong, so I can't imagine that it's only going to be better than yesterday. But yeah, so I've got some technical stuff that I'm still working with, but I think hopefully by next week I should get it under control. I'm also excited about a new partnership that I'll be announcing soon that's going to get this show in front of a lot more eyeballs. All right, so things that I'll be discussing in today's episode is the 4 things that you might not have learned in your entry level freediving course. Now, if you haven't taken a freediving course, then of course you didn't. Of course, you did learn this stuff. All right, so let's give an overview of what we're going to cover. So one, that there's definitely a difference diving in that kind of perfect world of a freediving class with a line and an instructor, and in the real world, right, when you're out on your own, you don't have all those stuff. Second, that your working depth, right, needs to be very different than your maximum depth that you do in a controlled environment in the class. Third thing, I'll be going over this idea of that you would not be 100% convinced that the blackout, that you wouldn't feel that coming. Like a lot of students, they kind of don't believe that. They think, yeah, but if I was a blackout, I'd know something would feel right. And then lastly, I'll be going over how that most people that take a freediving class, when they leave that entry level class, they don't really have any sort of game plan to train at home after the class. All right. So as always, put your questions in the comments. And I will, towards the end of the show, I don't answer them when they come up. What I do is I wait towards the end, and then I've got a way that I can go back and see all the questions, and then I go through and answer them there. All right, so line diving, right? So one of the things is there is a big difference in line diving versus diving in the real world after a program, right? When you're taking a free diving class, everything is perfect, right? You've got great, you've got the perfect setup for you to do as well as you can do. So typically you're diving on a rig, which has a line, right? So you've got a frame of reference. You've got an instructor who's hopefully following you all the way down and all the way up, right? Making sure you're safe. That's going to make you feel way more comfortable, right? So you're going to feel better that way. And then you've also got this idea of you've done everything to make yourself dive as good as possible. So what I mean by this is like I remember once I had a student who took the intermediate class, I think maybe hit 80, 100 feet. And he called me up after the class. He's like, yeah, man, I went out, tried to go spearfishing at 50 feet. And man, it was like, as soon as I got there, I felt terrible. Like, what the hell? Like, I did so awesome in your class. And so I said, okay, well, remember in the class, we did a lot of things we do everything possible to make sure all of that works really well. Right, so what are those things? One of the things is every freediving class in the United States, most every class, is going to do something called pull downs or warm ups, right? So that's where we do slow, relaxed. We start off by doing what we call pull downs. We do to shallow depths. Like I typically, my first day, they do pull downs to 15 feet, 30 feet, and 45 feet. And these are super slow, right? We're pulling down the line nice and slow, right? We're not looking at the plate. And what this is doing is it's kicking in our dive reflex. Excellent, Johnny. So one of the reasons that all the freediving classes start with these slow pull downs is they're designed to kick in your mammalian dive reflex, right? So let's say you're a recreational freediver. Let's say you're a spear fisherman, right? You maybe have heard about this dive reflex, but you're like, I don't know what's this guy talking about, right? You know the dive reflex. Everyone who has some good freediving or spearfishing experience knows that if you go spearfishing or freediving for 2-3 hours, after 2 or 3 hours, you feel awesome, right? You got a super long breath hold. You feel super relaxed. You feel super comfortable, right? Why is that? Right? I ask spearfishermen, they say things like, "Oh, you just got to warm your lungs up." Okay, not really, but I mean, whatever you want to call it. But you got to get your dive reflex tuned in, right? That's why when you go diving for 2-3 hours, you feel so great. It's because your mammalian dive reflex is kicked in. Now, your mammalian dive reflex is a well-documented, well-understood physiological response to our body holding our breath, and it's exacerbated or increased by being underwater, right? So that all helps. Now, a freediving class, my students will they tell me, and for the past 10 years, they tell me things like, I tell my students the third dive of your course, the third dive in the ocean, you're going to be at 50 feet, assuming you can equalize your ears, assuming they can do Frenzel. That their third dive in the class, they're going to be at 50 foot, and they're going to be pissed at me because I'm going, you up, you, and they're pissed. But I want to stay down here, right? I tell them the first day in class, they're like, whatever, dude, right? But they can't believe it, that they feel they're at a depth, deeper than they've ever been before, and they feel calm, not, I want to die. Right? Now, there's a lot of reasons that happens. I mean, there's a lot of technique and breathing and all these other things that we teach them. But one of them is they've kicked in their dive reflex. So on their third dive, they will feel better than they will, or better than they would after two hours of diving. Now, the other thing is most recreational and spearfishing, all of the excitement and the up and down and all of that stuff, the adrenaline that makes the dive reflex go away. Right, so in a freediving class, we're going to do every single thing we can to make that dive reflex come out, and that's one of the reasons you feel so good and can dive so well. Other thing is, you've got the instructor, right? Who's, like I said, hopefully going to be following you all the way down, following you all the way up, right? So you've got someone right there, which makes you feel super confident. You feel safe, right? You're gonna dive better when you're in this amazingly safe environment. Right, which is one reason right off the bat. If you want to dive better, if you want more bottom time, if you want to dive whatever the hell it is you want to do, right? Dive safely. You're gonna dive better when you know there's someone sitting up there that's gonna be waiting on you as soon as you surface that knows what to do. It's just gonna happen automatically, right? I remember, free diving. This was before I had taken a course, and I could, I wouldn't be. I remember I'd be like maybe 40-ish feet cruising around, and I feel terrible. I'm, having contractions. There's just like that, voice in the back of your head. It's like this, and there's no one around. I'm totally diving by myself, and I'm like this. This maybe isn't super safe, which makes me feel worse and more uncomfortable and dive worse, right? So it definitely works against you. So the idea is, what I'm getting at is when you're diving in that class, you're diving on the line, you've got everything working for you, and then when you leave that controlled environment, you dive on your own, you don't have all that stuff, right? So you might also wonder, well, why do you even dive on a line, right? Because that's a question I get a lot, especially from the spearfishermen. They're like, I don't want to be a competitive freediver, Ted. Why are we diving up and down a rope all day? Like, it doesn't make any sense, right? But the reason that we all use the lines is it teaches you and forces you to learn how to dive down perfectly straight. right? Because I don't care what you're doing, your free diving would be benefited if you went down straight, right? You look at so many beginning free divers and spearfishing when they go down at a 30-degree angle, right? That means it takes more time to get down there and it takes more energy to get down there. Just go down straight, right? So by using that line, it's going to force you to, because the first day of class, all the students are doing this. They're diving down and they're hitting that boom, boom, boom. They're hitting that line the whole way down, right? They're running right into it, right? It's like they have to keep pushing it off their face, right? I see the thing like smashed on their face. It's because the line is straight, and it's because they're going down to the angle the whole time, right? So it's a very humbling tool, and it shows you very clearly that you're smashing your face in the line, which means you're going down to the angle, right? So that's one of the reasons, many reasons we use the line. Okay, so those that are there, let me know where you're from, if you're more spearfisherman or free diver, and if you have questions, when I get through everything, I will go through and answer your questions at the end. All right, so second thing that you need to understand, I this really wasn't something, this is something I learned from Bill Van Diemen, because he's a PFI instructor, a spearfisherman out of Bradenton, or I can't believe I'm blanking on where he's from. But anyway, so he runs freediving courses, Abyss Freediving. And I heard him really harping on this, and this is, I mean, it's a great idea, it's a great thing to be explaining, is, you know, the students need to understand that these PBs that you're getting, personal, we call them PBs, personal best, that you get from diving on the line, that is your line personal best, which is not the same as I'm spearfishing personal best, right? Totally different, right? And in fact, you know, if let's say my students are, you know, they're doing 100-foot, you know, they're high-fiving that they're doing 100-foot dives on the line, that doesn't mean they're going to go spearfishing at 100 feet at all, right? I mean, touching the plate on a line is, you touch it and you head back up, right? Now, I'm not saying, I'm not minimizing that. There's a lot of skill, a lot of technique, and a lot of things you have to learn and sort through to be able to do a 100-foot dive and touch the plate, or even a 66-foot dive, right, in the entry-level course. But that does not just mean that you're going to be able to go home, pick up your spear gun, and do the same, because when you spearfish, you don't go like this, right? You go like this, and then you stay, and then you shoot the fish, and a bunch of shit happens, and then everything goes crazy, and you got to deal with it, right? So, you know, again, you're, it's not the same. So I believe it's what I heard Bill always saying is, you want to be spearfishing or whatever it is you're doing at, you know, 60 to 70% of your maximum depth, right? So, you know, if you're 100, you know, hit 100 foot in your class, you know, 60, 70 foot is a, you know, reasonable operating range. And again, something that you'll get and learn through experience. I had a guy, and I had this conversation several times. They call me up the phone and they say, hey, you know, I'm a spearfisherman, you know, I hunt at like 50 feet. I want to take the intermediate course. And I had this one guy, I think he called me and Facebook messaged me on 2 or 3 different occasions. And he's like, I want to be a 100-foot spearfisherman. Will your course do that? And I was like, I said 2 things immediately. No, and why? Why do you want to be a 100-foot spearfisherman? So no, the course will not turn you into a 100-foot spearfisher. The course will teach you to touch the plate at 100 feet, right? And that's no small accomplishment. There's a lot of skills and things that are done to do that. The average person in that PFI intermediate program, mine or anyone's, is going to do a 100-foot dive. But that does not mean that they're, you know, have the ability to go spearfish at 100 feet. And the other thing I was trying to tell him is, why do you want to spearfish at 100 feet? Now look, if your ultimate goal in life is to spearfish at 100 feet, I mean, that's fine. But I'm just saying, that I don't think that's a very super reasonable goal, because that is very, and I'm not saying there's anything, if you want to do that, okay, but that's very dangerous to be a 100-foot spearfisherman, right? And the other thing I'll tell you is, a lot of people say they want to shoot fish at 100 feet because, oh, all the cool people do it. A lot of people out there that say they're 100-foot spearfishermen that ain't, right? I mean, that's just the way it is, right? Now, the other thing is, just because someone went to 100 foot, got there, and as soon as they got there, there was a fish broadside and they shot it, that doesn't mean they're 100-foot spearfishermen. I mean, they got lucky as hell, and that's awesome, and then now they're saying they're 100-foot spearfishermen, right? 100-foot spearfisherman needs to go down 100 feet, and be able to have 20, 30 seconds bottom time, and then shoot a fish, and then deal with whatever chaos happens after they do that, all at 100 feet, right? That requires significant bottom time, significant comfort at depth, and so that's like the lifelong commitment. Um, the when they leave my class, and I think this guy I was saying is, he was like, well, what do you mean you won't be 100 foot? I'm like, you're not going to be 100 foot spearfishing and leave my class. You're just not gonna. I said, if you were to do all of the training that I give you in the program, and you did that for months, right? That's a possibility. But I also know from experience, I'll be telling this later, very few of my students actually do the training that I tell them. Right, which just drives me insane. Right, I give them all the tools to improve their free diving, and they don't do it, and basically because it sucks. It's kind of hard. Sorry, Johnny, I probably shouldn't have just said that about the program you just purchased, but it's gonna hurt. But yeah, so that idea is, the other thing is, when you're spearfishing, especially at those kind of depths. Like in my mind, deep spearfishing is, I would say most spearfishing is like 70 foot and shallower. This is actually more, but like to me, deep spearfishing is 80 and deeper. Right. That's when to me is like, oh, that's deep spearfishing, and like to me, when I say deep spearfishing, I mean risk, right? Because if you think about it, you compare. So I always love it when the spearfishermen, I tell them my deepest free dive is 279 feet, and they're like, "Oh my God, like it's so ridiculous! You're diving to that depth. Like, why do you have a death wish? It's so dangerous. You competitive free divers are idiots, right? You're just gonna kill yourself out there." And I'm like, okay, you can question our motives if you want, but when you start talking about safety and that stuff, I'm gonna say, right? Competitive free divers, we've had 2 fatalities in the past 28 years. Spearfishermen in the United States, we can't even count the number per year that die in the United States. And it's somewhere around 50 to 75 fatalities per year at breath holding. Not all of it spearfishing, but the biggest part of it, right? So the risk is with the spearfishermen, right? Not the super deep competitive freedivers. Because we understand the risks and we have super good systems to take care of those risks, whereas many spearfishermen haven't taken a freediving class, don't watch their buddy, don't know what to do if their buddy has a blackout or overweighted. And so ultimately that means that, unfortunately, many a spearfishermen, if they were to black out, they sink down to the bottom of the ocean and die. And that's it. So one of the things that's happening is that danger or risk factor when you're spearfishing deep, it's exacerbated. All of those things are, like the fact that, now if you're at 90 feet, by the time you make a decision to pull the trigger, you got 90 foot of water over your head till you can breathe, right? Whereas that certainly is exacerbating the risk that when you have that same scenario at 40 feet, right? Because it's only just a little bit away, right? So in my opinion, all of the risks are, I say exponential, that's not the right word, but are greatly increased as you're spearfishing deeper and deeper, right? Because you just got more chances for stuff to go wrong. Now, that's not to say you can't spearfish at those depths safe, because I know plenty of people that have really tight safety teams and they really know what they're doing and they're tuned in, and that's awesome. And I love to see that. I love to see the kind of growth of that, of people that are diving those deeper depths, and they do have amazing teams, and they have multiple people on the surface, and they're diving down to depth and handing off guns to help the person get to the surface easier. That's awesome, right? And hopefully we see more of that and not less of that. Now, one of the things I'll mention is I've got I was talking about the dive reflex earlier. I guess it was so I write in Spearing Magazine. I've been writing columns for them since 2013. And I always joke that basically almost anything you learn on this show, if you just purchased Spearing Magazine and read all the articles that I've written, which is a lot since I've been doing that since 2013, almost everything I talk about you would learn in there. So I did an article on the dive reflex, I guess it was maybe a year ago. That's an excellent question, Scott. I will handle that at the end when I go over the questions. I will certainly answer that question. Awesome question. That's why I don't look at the questions. I get distracted. What was I saying? Oh yeah, so I was writing an article for Spearing Magazine, and I did one on the dive reflex. Now, when I write an article, I'm limited to 500, 600 words. And if you haven't figured out yet, I can talk a lot, and I can do a lot. I can run my mouth a lot more than I can in 500 words in an article. So I had so much to say about the dive reflexes. I made it a video just for the guys at Spearhead Magazine. So when I get done with the show, I'm gonna put the link. So when I get done with the show, I'm gonna put all the links to the things that I'm talking about in the post. Right? I can't obviously do it right now because it's live. But one of the things I'll give you guys is a link to a free course that goes over that dive reflex in much more detail. I was kind of talking about it, but kind of in a vague sense. And so I'll put that link up there at the end, and you can access that again. It's free. It's a good video that goes over all that stuff, the dive reflex. Actually, I love that video because Tim Kennedy, I was on the Discovery Channel a couple months ago, or maybe 3 or 4 months ago, training with Tim Kennedy. I was on the Discovery Channel. I was on the Discovery Channel for all about 8 seconds all of the show. I trained him for about 4 hours, and they put about 8 seconds of me on the show. I still can say I was on the Discovery Channel. The reason that they found out about me was from that video. So I'm a big fan of that video. But I'll put that up for you guys. Okay. The other thing that happens when people leave a freediving course is sometimes they're not 100% convinced of this very important fact, is that when you are diving in the ocean, you will not feel the blackout coming most of the time. Most of the time you'll feel absolutely fine, right? And the reason I say most people will leave a freediving class and not really believe that is because my students for years didn't believe that, right? And there's a difference. I told them that. I told them, hey, you got to do the safety stuff because, if you black out, you wouldn't even know it's coming. I promise you, I've told every student I've ever had that. But I know for a fact that for the first 3 years of my teaching, I wasn't convincing them of that. And how did I find that out? Well, a very unpleasant situation for me. I found out my students were not diving safely. They were not doing one up, one down. They weren't watching each other. Yeah, but Ted, it's only 50 feet. Yeah, but Ted, it's, I'm just like, what? And so it kind of made me understand, and I talked with this on Freedive Cafe recently on a podcast that I did with them, is that there's a big difference in telling someone how to be safe and convincing someone to be safe, right? Because the first one is just information, right? If I tell you how to be safe, you heard me say it. That's okay, great, right? But you freediving or spearfishing, whatever you're doing, you're not implementing any of that, then it does you no good, right? So the key is you got to convince that person to actually implement what you learned. And that's something that I didn't do very well. Now, here's the kind of the crux of the issue. Here is why, and I believe this was probably my favorite article that I've ever written in Spearhead Magazine, is here's why, in my opinion, people don't dive safely, don't watch their buddy when they... I mean, at this point, if you're a free diver or a spear fisherman, I mean, unless you just picked up a mask and snorkel yesterday, right? But that's not the way most people have been in the sport for a while. They've heard about blackout. They've heard they're supposed to watch their buddy. It's not like they're like, what? Watch your buddy? I've never heard of such a thing. They know they're supposed to. They're just not gonna. They just don't wanna. They're not gonna do it, right? It's not like it's new information, right? Like when I go down, I'll be going down to the South Florida, the spearfishing guys, right? So they're a spearfishing club in Miami. I'll be going down there Thursday, and I'll probably my 3rd or 4th time there, and I'm gonna try to get them on board of safe diving. But I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if there are people that have seen me do that presentation 4 times and still might not be actually implementing what I'm asking, and I will explain here's why I think that is. Right? I'm not picking on the South Florida guys. The guys are awesome. They're super fun guys. But this is the reason, in my opinion, that people don't. And it's as follows. I come along. What's up, Jackie? I come along and I say, you got to be safe because there's blackout come without warning and you wouldn't feel it. And they're gonna go, I'd know. Come on, you can't just hold your breath and black out and not know. And I say, yeah, you can. And they go, yeah, I don't believe it, right? Which is the same thing that I thought. I remember sitting in that class and Kirk was talking about all this. You could black out and you wouldn't know. I'm just like, no, that's not. Like, I understand, Kirk, you're trying to make us be safe, and you're just trying to scare us into it. And the reason I was convinced he wasn't right was because, like, I've held my breath for a long time, almost to where I had an issue. And it hurt. I mean, it was obvious that I was getting close, right? I mean, so the idea is most people, anyone who's listening to this, has at some point, I can almost guarantee you, gone like this. Looked at the stopwatch. At some point, they went, oh my God, that was horrible, right? And that's what people know about holding their breath, right? Is now if you were to draw, of course, never in a million years would any sane person think to do this, but if you were to graph that breath hold and have your little drawing, and on your axis as your graph, you've got two things. As you move along this way on the graph, you're increasing time, right? The longer you're holding your breath, the time is going up. This way on the graph is your discomfort level, right? So all that happens is when you're holding your breath, the more longer you're holding your breath, the more your discomfort level is. And it's just that slow, steady increase, right? Each 5 seconds you hold your breath, so Scott, that thing just gets more uncomfortable, more uncomfortable, more uncomfortable. Start having contractions. You're like, oh my gosh, it sucks. Oh my God, I can't do this anymore. Eventually you go, that's all, I don't want to do that anymore, right? That sucks. So everyone understands intuitively, without ever processing the stuff I'm talking about, that the longer you hold your breath, the more uncomfortable it gets. So when I come along and say you would black out and you have no idea it's coming, you're like, no, that makes no sense, because they process that as, okay, Ted, so you're saying if I were to sit on the couch and hold my breath, I could hold my breath to a blackout and I would feel fine? No, that's not true, Ted. I refuse to believe that. And they're right. In most circumstances, if you were to sit there and hold your breath on the couch, there's no way you can hold your breath till you blacked out and you'd feel fine. You'd feel this slow, steady increase in symptoms. So now you're probably like, okay, I'm a little confused, Ted. Right? Here's the thing. When you're diving in the ocean, you don't have this slow, steady increase in signals. You don't. It comes on extremely rapidly, right? This is why you see so many videos of these spear fishermen blacking out. And unfortunately, for the technical issues that I have right now, I can't show you the videos and the things I'm talking about. I'm trying to get that fixed. But if you just Google spearfishing blackout videos, you can sit there for an hour and watch them. And you're going to see these people coming up from depth, and they're going to look absolutely fine. And then all of a sudden, you're going to see them release air, and then they're going to sink down to the bottom of the ocean because they're overweighted, right? And they'll tell you, watching the interviews, I'm telling you, these people feel fine. They have no idea that anything is wrong, right? And the reason that happens is the physiology and the physics is very different when you're coming up from a dive in the ocean versus when you're sitting on the couch holding your breath, or you're in the pool doing dynamics or whatever you're doing, right? It has to, they're way beyond the scope of this thing, because I don't have the tools to explain this in detail, but the partial pressure of oxygen drops extremely rapidly the last 30 feet to the surface, and that's why your oxygen level in your blood and your brain goes from, can go from normal to blackout in 5 seconds, and that's why you don't feel it coming. Okay, so that is something that when a lot of people leave the freediving class, I don't think that they sometimes don't really believe that. And again, it's because my students didn't believe it, because I didn't do a good job of explaining it. And so I try to do a much better job in the safety section of explaining the science behind all of that. And then also it helps after you watch 10 spearfishing blackout videos and they all have no idea it's coming. Like, okay, I tell it to you why it is. I show you a little bit of the physics of it, and then you see it happening with your own eyeballs. And at some point you're like, okay, I get it, Ted. I wouldn't feel it's coming. So that is why so many people, I think, aren't that worried about the safety aspect, is because they just think that they would feel it coming, right? And so I always say, like, yes, if you're holding your breath on the couch, you would feel it's coming. If you're holding your breath in the ocean coming up from a dive, you're probably not. So someone just put a big question up there, and I'll answer that when I get to the end, which actually I'm getting pretty close. So I might do that right now. So give me 1 second. I've got to go to a different window. All right, so first off, someone had asked me, wow, this thing isn't picking up all the chat. Someone had asked me a question about what do you do when you can't see the person? So this is one of the most common questions I get when I talk about freediving safety. And freediving safety is pretty darn simple, right? It's one, dive in, and you don't dive by yourself, right? When you're diving, you need someone at the surface watching you. When you hit the surface, that person wants to be close enough to grab. Why do they want to be close enough to grab? Because our arms as human beings are about 3 feet long. If I hit the surface and my buddy was in arm's reach of me, right? If that person blacks out, you can grab them. And that's why arm's reach, right? You stop their airway from going in the water. You stop them from sinking underwater. Now, I have a ton of students from New York. I have tons of students. One of the biggest objections I get when I talk about safe freediving is they're like, look, Ted, maybe in Fantasyland where you live, when you can actually see things and people when you freedive, like, you know, maybe in Florida, you got blue water everywhere. Like where I dive, we're up in Montauk and we're spearfishing in, 40 foot of water, and we've got 10 foot of visibility. I can't see nothing. I can't remotely see my buddy when he does anything. He dives into water, I see his fin once, twice, and I don't see him again. Right? So their point is, you can't even try to dive safe because you can't even see the person. And you have to understand that's a problem, right? If you can't see the person, it makes being safe very difficult. So the two things that I tell you to do: make yourself more visible, and you can do that by putting white tape on your snorkel, put white tape on the back of your weight belt and your weights, or either some combination of, right? So that way when you're like this and they're looking down on you, they can that white will pop. You can also put that same white tape, yellow, orange, on your fins, on the back, on the fin pocket, like the rubber part, and then the fins. And so on the back side, and then also on the short flat part, right? So the fins like this, so you can put it on both sides of that. Again, that way you'll see it on the way down, and you'll see it when they're this way, right? So you make yourself more visible. But probably the single best thing you can do, especially if you're spearfishing, because it just makes sense, is put a float line on your gun. Right now, if I'm diving in 50 foot of viz and I got 50 foot of water and I got 10 foot of viz, and I make a drop and you're on the surface, I disappear almost immediately. But what do you see at the surface? The red ball, right? And you just follow that. Oh, hey, Lyndon, fluorescent green. Okay, actually that makes sense. I can see that popping. I hear people say red a lot, but red is one of the first colors that disappears. So let's see, what was I saying? Oh yeah, so the red float. And just follow that red float around, right? It's going to be super simple to see that red float, and then when that person surfaces, they're going to be right near the float. Now, I mean, okay, in theory, if the float line's 50 foot long, they can come up 50 foot away from the float, but number one, that's at least better than nothing, and you're not going to come up 50 foot away from the float. What I do, if I'm using a float line, when I come up, if I just see the line angled like that, I just follow it that way when I kick. So if you were safety in me and I was using a float line, you would quickly learn my head is going to pop up between 5 feet from that ball. If you just follow the ball, you're going to be in a good spot. Okay? All right. One of the other things that you definitely will not learn in your entry-level freediving course is how to train when you leave. Okay? I mean, maybe the other courses do a lot better job than I do. My entry-level students, I cover training a little bit, but I don't certainly go into it in huge detail. My intermediate course, for sure. I mean, I set aside an hour of time for my intermediate students to share with them the specific training tools that I've used. Again, I always say I'm not reading, when I'm going over the training, it's not like this is what the manual says. Like, this is what I've personally done, and I know it works. Now, I will tell you, for the past 10 years, I have been teaching the training wrong. And it drives me insane, because what drives me insane is for 10 years, I get to the intermediate course, the part where I'm teaching them all the secrets and all the things that all the competitive freedivers do and how to train and all this sort of stuff. And I tell them what to do, and they don't ever do it. They never do it. They never do it, right? And so I guess for the past 3 years, I've turned it into a sales pitch, the same way the safety pitch. And I try to just beat into them that they need to go do all this training. And I know, I call them up, I send them an email, how's the training going? Oh, the wife, the kids, the job. And I'm like, you spent $1,000 to come take this class. You flew here, you took time off work, you took vacation, right? You rented a car, and you all did all this to get better at your freediving. The course is going to make your freediving better for sure. But I'm like, the training that you do afterwards, like, that's going to just take it to the next level, and I just can't get them to do it. And so it's frustrating, because Well, it's not frustrating. This has happened over multiple times in my career. When my students do something, make a mistake. When I teach the instructor program, I always teach the new instructors is when your students do something wrong, it's almost always the instructor's fault. 78% of the time, it's the instructor's fault. Sometimes the students are just crazy, right? But most of the time, if they're doing something wrong, it's your fault as the instructor, right? And so I've had that come back to haunt me over my 10 years of teaching, because anytime I get mad about what the students do, I'm like, oh yeah. So I'm mad that the students, almost none of them will do the training I give in the intermediate class. So whose fault is that? It's mine. It's mine. I'm not doing something right, right? And what I realized is, I realized it. I got them for 4 days, 12-hour days. I mean, I'm wearing them out. And by the time they get this information, they just like goes in and shit just goes out, right? They're just over it, right? It's the very last part of the lecture, the very end of the course. They're exhausted, and they just don't care, right? And they don't take notes. And sometimes when I do it in the classroom, they can take notes. But how awesome do people take notes? They're not well, right? They don't take notes. There's no way to go reference it. And so, some of them, a lot of them forget. So when I ask them what they do in the training, most of them say no. And occasionally they'll be like, oh yeah, I wanted to, what is that? And I'll call them on the phone and try to remind them of everything. But ultimately it's just the way I've been delivering that information is not ideal, right? I mean, the students aren't doing it, and I know it's awesome, but they're not doing it, right? So that's one of the reasons I created the 28-day freediving transformation, right? So the idea is this is in essence, the 5 training tool. Actually, I would say this is what I teach my intermediate students, but it's actually way better than what I teach my intermediate students because I don't have time constraints. But in essence, it's the 5 best dry land training exercises that you can do at home. Nobody, no pool, don't need to go to the ocean, right? So this is awesome, especially because most people that free dive, they're not, freediving instructors who free dive, 5 days a week, 52 week, year round, right? They do it in spurts, right? And so if you know anything about, freediving or spearfishing, you notice that if you go on a 4-day trip, the first day sucks, the second day sucks, the third day's okay, the fourth day you're like, yeah, man, I'm feeling good. And you fly home and you don't go free, you don't do it again for 2 months, and you're always kind of going through that, right? So this training program gets rid of that, right? You can go through all of that at home, right? So it's 3 breath holding exercises. So you're gonna do 3 different breath holds a week, and I mean each one is a completely different setup because each exercise I'm giving you has a specific point, right? And then there's one that's focused on learning to delay and minimize your contractions, which is really cool. And so those breath holding exercises, that's 3 days a week. You need to give me about 30 to 40 minutes, 25 to 40 minutes, right? 2 days a week, I just need you for 5 minutes. You just need to do 5 minutes worth of stretching, right? And we stack that up together for 28 days, and that is going to radically transform your freediving physiology from the repetition and what we're doing with the dive reflex, right? And that's how the program works. Now, here's what's super cool. I say the program's in beta, which it's not that it doesn't work. Beta, like what beta really means, is it means I keep throwing stuff in for free. And once I'm done with it, I'm going to take it out of beta, and it's going to basically the price is going to go up a lot. But so what you get now is you get a couple weeks ago, and this is a huge addition. I added a private Facebook group. Right, it's so cool. The first thing I do every morning is I open up my computer and I go in and I answer all the guys' questions. And they're all in there every day posting what they did. They say, day 1, I did this. Day 2, I did this. Day 3. So then they're all kind of getting to know each other and encouraging each other. I go through and, give my feedback on things. And actually, from some of that feedback, I've actually been changing the program because I see I'm making mistakes, right? If people are always asking the same questions, that means I'm not doing something right. So it's neat that I can, I go through and do that. I'm really excited that Noob Spearo, if you guys don't know Noob Spearo, they're a podcast out in Australia, Spearfishing podcast. They have an awesome book called 99 Spearfishing Tips. It's an ebook. They have a printed one and an ebook. But it's 99 spearfishing tips, right? It's illustrated. It's really nice from spearfishermen all over the world. And the students of the 28-day program get that for free. So I literally cut them a check every time someone signs up for that so that you guys can get that for free, right? So you get the Facebook group, you get the 28-day. I've also got one of my very best interviews with Jeremy Gamble. He's the owner of Spearfishing Magazine. Sperry Magazine, and he goes over how to, he went through my course twice, how he implements the safeties portion of my course and how he implements it with spearfishing, right? So he goes over that as well, right? So there's a lot of cool stuff in there. The course is $95. I'm going to put a coupon code when I finish the show, put it in the post, and that'll I'll say $15 off that. And I absolutely assure you, at some point when I get everything sorted, this course is going to go up to probably around $150. All right, so it's going to go up once I get everything sorted. The one thing I will tell you is for anyone, if you want one of these, I don't sell these, can't get these anywhere, except for one way. When you go purchase the program, you'll notice there's an option for an additional, you can do Skype sessions with me, right? If you buy the one with the 2 Skype sessions, I will ship you one of these. Right? That's the only way to get one of these guys, okay? All right, let's see. Let me go through and answer some of these questions. Gosh, okay, here we go. Okay, so now I can see the questions. All right, so I believe wholeheartedly not being able to feel a blackout. I'm only trained in the pool, static apnea, and laps. So Johnny, you the hardest it is to feel anything come is in the ocean. The easiest it is to be sitting on the couch holding your breath, right? To feel that thing coming, and then the pool I would say is in the middle, right? But I mean ultimately you can't. And the whole point of a freediving class and being safe is you wash yourself the responsibility to like, hey, I can't rely on knowing when to come up because that's not safe. So the only thing you can do is you dive with a buddy so that God forbid something happens, you're fine. I mean, I'm not saying you have a buddy and you just keep going until you black out, but the point is there's no reliable way. There's nothing I can tell you that says, okay, if you're diving in the pool and you only keep it to 50 meters and you only breathe and you breathe up this long, you don't do this. Like if I could put like the rules on how to not black out on a postcard, I'd never teach freediving class again. I'd just be selling postcards, right? I'd make a lot of money, right? If I just follow the rules in this postcard and never black out. There is no thing that I or any other freediving instructor can give you that will make it so that won't happen. So the only reasonable response to that situation is you need to dive with the buddy, not the lifeguard watching. You need a buddy in the water with you, right over you, so that if anything happens, and that person needs to know what to do and be trained, right? So that's that question. All right, so let's see, who was that? That was Johnny Timmy. Okay, so someone asked me about a FRV. So actually, this is interesting. FRV. All right, so Terry Moss has a recovery vest. He actually approached me 3 years ago and had me test it out. He said that what he wanted me to test it for was he's had it for a long time, probably 10 years. And he constantly makes improvement to it. And the beginning feedback was it was so bulky and big. People were just like, this thing sucks. It's just like all this extra drag. And so they didn't like it so much. And so he listened to that feedback and he's made some upgrades to it. And he said, Ted, he goes, I want you to test it because I want to know like what a competitive freediver who's super focused on streamlining would think of it. Right? So I took it out. Me and Nick Faza, I think Nick Faza, and we went out there and tested it. And it's crazy streamlined. I don't notice it. In no way would I be like, oh, that thing's just so crazy streamlined. It was no good. No, it was very hardly noticeable. So it was huge improvement on that. Now, you might think I'm about to give a glowing endorsement of that thing, and I like the FRV in one particular situation, and the way that I like it ain't the way they use it. The way I love Terry Moss's freediving recovery vest is when two people are diving exactly the way that I want from a safety standpoint. One up, one down, close enough to grab, watching for no less than 30 seconds, on point with the safety, and they're wearing vests. Because that means they're more safe than not. And like that's Awesome. Of course I like that. If you want to be diving in teens and do everything I'm talking about and wear the vest, awesome. That makes you safer than you were. That ain't the way people use the vest. People use the vest so that they don't have to have a buddy. Okay? And let me tell you why there's some major problems, in my opinion, with that. Okay, one of the things, I mean, there's some cool things with the vest, don't get me wrong, right? One of the cool things it does is when that thing triggers, it's going to inflate, it's going to take you up to the surface, and it's going to put you on your back in a head and your airway up situation, right, as opposed to face down. All right, so I'm not going to lie, that is awesome, right? You could trigger that manually, or the better or worse, once you understand what I'm saying, is it's triggered if that thing thinks you blacked out. And here's how it thinks you blacked out. You go to the surface after a dive, and then all of a sudden you start slowly sinking down to the bottom. That thing is smart enough to go, you blacked out, and it inflates it, and it saves you. And that's awesome. That's a save. That's a win. That turned a fatality into a non-fatality. So of course I like that. Now, but it only catches that. Why did it go off? Because you were overweighted and you sunk to the bottom. So if I'm wearing that thing, I ain't gonna sink to the bottom when I black out because I'm smart. I weight myself so that if I were to black out, I'd end up at the surface, not underwater at the bottom of the ocean with all the cool kids. So if I'm wearing that thing and I come to the surface and I black out, it's going to never go off because I'm just sitting at the surface. I don't go anywhere. I'm stuck at the surface. So it won't save me. So if you're weighted properly, meaning you're safety oriented, it's not gonna save you in that situation, right? Now, there is a situation where it would fire in that situation. So there is one situation where it would catch a lot more of the blackouts. And basically, there's a little thing you wear on your wrist, and there's optionally, you can wear the thing on your wrist, which no one does, and there's a thing on your wrist, on your waist, so that when you come up to the surface, within 30 seconds, you have to like rub this thing by the sensor, right? And so that is the sensor going, oh, you consciously did that maneuver, which means you are not having a blackout, and so you're okay. And the thing is smart enough to say, if you don't take the sensor and rub it by me within 30 seconds, I know that means you blacked out. Because if you were conscious, you would do that, and then it would inflate. Okay? I like that, in theory. Except that Terry told me no one ever turns that thing on because invariably they forget because they're in the middle of fighting a fish and the thing goes when they don't want it to. And then they got to take it off and put it in and put another cartridge in. It just doesn't work, right? So what I understand from him is no one turns that setting on, right? So in my mind, that really takes a lot out of it. So basically, if you're overweighted and blackout, yeah, it's gonna save that, right? But if you're not overweighted, then I don't understand when it's gonna fire. Right? So anyway, I think it's a really cool option. I really like it when used in conjunction with safe freediving. I do, in my mind, it is absolutely not a substitute. Is it better than nothing? If you're going to dive by yourself, is wearing that better than nothing? Yes. Is that me saying I think it's a good idea? Absolutely not. But it is better than nothing. It ain't as good as a buddy. The best way to use it is with the buddy. But no one does it that way. So that's my thoughts on the Terry Moss vest. And he's a super nice guy. It was really cool it was really cool that he came up and wanted me to use it. I'll tell you one thing. That thing is streamlined as hell. Right? It is not bulky like it used to be. Yep, service minder, which most folks disable, which in my mind gets rid of its main function. So Nate is saying that. So Nate's in here. He's a past student of mine and now a PFI instructor with Blue Alchemy Freediving, and he took the course maybe a year or two ago. And because I was getting so irritated that my students weren't doing the training, he was talking about how I was using the reverse psychology on him. I was like, you won't do the training. You're not man enough to do it. You won't do it, right? To try to get people to do it. He actually did it. He's one of the few people. Most people don't do the training. All right, so I think I'm going to be wrapping this puppy up. Oh, yeah, it's 7:50, right? So, right, unless I see any questions in the chat, I'm going to wrap this thing up. So here's what I'll tell you. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed the show, right, if you feel like you learned good information, you're entertained, you like the new Freedive Live banner, which I really do. It's brand new Sky, the graphic designer for Spirit Magazine, just put that up there. But all kidding aside, if you enjoy the show, and you want to support the show, there's one single thing that you can do before you leave that helps, right? And that is when you leave here, hit the share button from where you're watching this, and then don't just hit the share button. Hit the share button and put Freedive Live with Ted Hardy is awesome. You guys should tune in, right? If you can do that, that spreads awareness for the show. I put a lot of time into the show, and like almost the audience is tiny. Right, I'm gonna keep at it, right? But you know, sharing that and letting other folks know about it, and that's how the show grows, right? Because my reach with immersion freediving is only so big; it's actually quite small. So stuff like that actually really makes a big difference. But yeah, so I will be back tomorrow, Wednesday, 7 p.m. I will not be doing it Thursday because I'm going to be doing I'll be down in the South Florida Freedivers doing a presentation for them on safety. So yeah, so it'll be Wednesday, then I'll be off Thursday. And then I'm excited, hopefully next week I'll be making a big announcement about what's going on with the future of Freedive Live, and it's going to definitely put the show in a lot more, in front of a lot more people. So anyway, I'll be letting you guys know about that. And that's it. So I will see you guys hopefully tomorrow, Wednesday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard. Share the video and tell people you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you next Wednesday. Dive safe out there. It's not even that hard, especially when you can go to freedivingsafety.com and learn how to get yourself for free.